Hey, so been a little bit of lax on our trade alerts. So in the last 11 days, we have had 7 trades in our league, and they've actually involved 7 different teams. A few of them twice, or more than a few of them twice. So pretty big deal that we got that much people moving stuff. Obviously, Fabian won't trade anybody unless he gets the best 3 players in the league back for Tom Brady. So he was not one of them. Uh, Brandy's not trading anybody because she's in second place. Scotty's not trading anyone because he's in first place. So that leaves the rest of us all making a trade this past week. So I'll run through these in order of who was traded for who. We'll go from there. First trade was JG traded James White for Cooper Kupp and Gio Bernard to Craig. Um, Looks like Craig got the better of this one so far. Bernard sits on our waiver wire right now, and Kupp is dead. So James White for released and dead. I'll take that. Next up here is Craig traded Kenyon Drake to Eli for Eckler. If this was a PPR league, I'd say that was a great trade for Craig to get Eckler. But Eckler is second fiddle behind Melvin Gordon. Uh, really, he's a 5-6 point a week guy unless he can somehow dive into the end zone. And you're never going to win a championship starting a guy like Eckler. And Kenyon Drake is fucking garbage. So Eli, keep him in your starting lineup this week. It'll be great. I promise. Our next trade is Matt, traded Jared Goff and Chris Carson to Darren for Cam Newton. Now, on the surface, Goff is ranked better than Cam, and obviously throwing in Chris Carson, who's been a great running back lately, is not the smartest move. But I just have a feeling that Cam's going to be a beast, and I can expect better consistency from him for the end of the season. Plus, he's had his bye week already, so I don't have to worry about bye weeks for the rest of the season. I like the move. It's good for Darren. Darren obviously likes to move. He has Mahomes. He's probably going to sit Goff on the bench almost every week, but at least he has that quarterback conundrum and not me. Our next trade goes between Brandon and Eli. Brandon trades Eli, Carlos Hyde, and Calvin Ridley. And Brandon goes ahead and he trades Mark Ingram. Now, I love this trade on the surface, honestly, for both. It helps Brandon get rid of one of the 2 New Orleans backs so he can be comfortable starting Kamara and being like, all right, I hope Mark Ingram dies. That's one perspective. You don't really want to have to root for both. The only good part about having both is you start them, understand that you're going to get 25 points out of the running back position, and you're like, oh well, if they each average 12 and a half, that's what it is. But more than likely, one's going to score 20 and the other one's going to score 5. But if you had them both started, you'd always get the 25 points. You're just never going to get 20 from one and 25 from the other. Now you can just root for Kamara to take over that job, score the 20 to 25 points a week, and get something better out of flex like Carlos Hyde, who just got traded to Jacksonville, who might not start this week because of the trade, but most certainly will start next week. So Carlos Hyde's going to be good play until Fournette's back. And even then, Calvin Ridley really upgrades his shitty wide receiver position. He's kind of a boomer bust receiver, but he's got a good boom potential in that passing offense. Our next trade was Matt, traded Matt Stafford to Brandon for Doug Baldwin. Plain and simple. Brandon's been starting Marcus Mariota. He needs some more consistent scoring from his quarterback position. His other quarterback, Russell Wilson's on bye this week. Baldwin's on bye this week. I could stash him for later, use him during the bye weeks to help me fill in my flex positions. And Brandon gets a real quarterback to actually start in his fantasy team and maybe, just maybe, wins the toilet bowl this week. The next one is I'll save this one for last. We'll go. The next one is another trade between Matt and Brandon. Funny enough, uh, I traded Jarvis Landry and Kenyon uh, Carryon Johnson to Brandon for Golden Tate. Um, Plain and simple. With that trade giving me a running back like Nick Chubb as a starter, I couldn't very well start two Cleveland Browns on my roster, so I had to kind of overpay to get a replacement. I liked Golden Tate. I think he's a great receiver. Um, I like him probably about the same as I like Jarvis Landry. But I also gave away Carryon Johnson because I'm never going to start Johnson and Tate in the same offense. I'm not going to start two Lions, just like I'm not going to start two Browns. So I threw it in to kind of sweeten the pot. I probably gave away too much for just Golden Tate, but in the end, Carryon Johnson was just going to sit on my bench anyway. So rather than have him sit there, make the trade worthwhile for my trade partner, make sure it gets accepted, and not throw out a stupid bullshit trade. So there it was. I'd have given a lot of you guys Landry and Kerryon Johnson for a wide receiver, but most of you guys didn't want something like that, and that's fine. Maybe you guys don't think they have value. Um, I think I'm gonna be bumming with Landry the next 4 weeks, since they're playing 4 of the 5 worst fantasy defenses in football the next 4 weeks. So I think he's going to be good for then, but maybe not so much come playoff time. Brandon's just looking to save face, not make the playoffs. So it's 6. So the last trade is the biggest one. This is the biggest trade alert. This one blew a lot of people's minds, mainly because to give away 2 players that are so obviously your keepers for next year, craziness. Nicky trades away Zeke Elliott, Julio Jones, Carson Wentz, and Marshawn Lynch to Eli. I mean, just think of the amount of fantasy points just going towards Eli in this trade. It's Zeke. We know he's a beast. He's a top 5 running back. Top 5. That's a lot, okay? And Julio Jones. When he's himself, is a top 5 wide receiver. Carson Wentz was the number 1 quarterback in fantasy last year, and he's dropped off a little coming back from that injury this year. And maybe he doesn't have the running game and the weapons, but he's still a top 10 quarterback. And Marshawn Lynch, who's hurt, but he wasn't hurt at the time of this trade. We all thought he was going to play. So, then you get the starting running back for Oakland. It's a fucking throw-in. And in exchange, Eli has traded to Nicky Drew Brees, who is arguably a much better quarterback than Carson Wentz. So you do get an upgrade there, Nicky. It's guaranteed points. Drew Brees is one of the few quarterbacks that go off for 40 points like that and just fuck over your opponent. So, I'm glad you got Drew Brees out of it because he's good, but you're never going to keep a quarterback, so you still don't have a keeper. You got David Johnson, who's on a team with no quarterback, and you just started David Johnson this week, and you got 6 points out of him. That's what he does if he doesn't have a cake matchup. If he plays against a mildly good team, he's not scoring 10 points, and you got to deal with that. There's no matchup that Zeke's gonna score 6 points. He's gonna beat 6 points every week, no matter what. He's a guarantee. So do you keep David Johnson next year? Is he really a keeper? You get Tyler Boyd, who is a 6-week superstar and will not be ranked in the top 20 by season's end. So you got a garbage wide receiver, and then you got Julian Edelman, who is still coming off an ACL tear. He had a decent week last week, and I know he's Tom Brady's favorite target, but he is not a 15-point-a-week fantasy wide receiver, and he sure as shit ain't a keeper. So maybe you got 1 keeper for 2 keepers that you traded away, and I forget who else you got on your team, but I mean, you've essentially basically said, I'm going to keep one guy next year, and that's David Johnson, and then I'll go into the, that free round and hopefully start over. And you've given Eli stupid choices to make on who he's going to keep next year. Now, with that said, Eli doesn't have a complete team. Uh, I think he's a little short on during bye weeks. Let me pick my nose. I think he's a little short on bye weeks. I think when one of his starters is out, he has a really hard time filling that spot, and he's going to have a hard time. And he might lose some matchups because he's going to have big holes in his lineup. But when it comes to playoff time, which is what he's looking for, when you can start your best 10 players, there's only 2 teams that match up against him, in my eyes. Maybe 3 if they keep going. So it's going to be real tough for people to beat Eli once bye weeks are out. He should make the playoffs, no problem. So, come playoff time, he's gonna be a tough matchup. And this trade makes that happen. So those are our trade alerts. I know it's 11 minutes long for trade alerts. That's fucking crazy. Sorry. Balls, wieners, balls. Maybe I'll have a fun video at the end of this for you if you watch the whole thing.